Hello and welcome to the Wire Talks. I'm Sidharth Bhatia. President Trump's election and his announcements subsequently have caused confusion and consternation among many people, including Indians, especially his determination to deport illegal immigrants and his comments on the H1B visa. At the same time, his hardcore MAGA supporters, Make America Great Again supporters, are also confused because they had assumed that he was against H1B visas, most of which go to Indians. But post being elected, he has said America needs talent that locals may not have, so there is no proposal for a blanket ban on giving H1B visas. This should provide some relief to genuinely qualified Indians, but that is not the case. They worry about their future chances. Those who are sitting here and those who are there worry whether they will get it or whether they will have to. There's a lot of anxiety, confusion about what exactly their status is going to be. This is a complicated subject. And to shed some light on this complex topic, I have invited Duriya Dhinojwala, a lawyer whose practice is in the areas of immigration, all areas of immigration, ranging from family-based immigrant visas to employment-based visas. She also assists corporate firms in these areas. Besides which, she also does a lot of pro bono work for which she has received many awards. She is a partner at the Ohio-based law firm Brennan, Manna and Diamond. Welcome to the Wire Talks, Duriya Dhinojwala.
Thank you for having me, Sidharth. I am an immigration attorney as well as I have done bankruptcy law at the same time. I've practiced for more than 24 years, and I look forward to having this conversation with you.
Thank you. That's excellent. You have set some additional context here. Duriya, at the outset, could you explain to us, assume that we don't know anything about it, what exactly the H1B visa is and what are the other forms of immigrant visas?
So the H1B visa is what we call here a non-immigrant visa, which allows a person in a foreign country, it can be anybody, does not have to be India, to come to the United States and actually work on it. And the good part about the H1B visa is it's a dual intent visa. Dual intent visa means that you could have an intent to immigrate on the H1B visa, unlike the other visas, which are O visas, TN visa, E-visas, which are also work visas, but those visas have a restriction. They cannot have an intent to immigrate when you get it. So the beauty about H1B is you could have an intent to immigrate and you can still get the H1B visa stamping done, approval done, because it allows an individual to basically apply for the green card and move to permanent residency. So that's, in a nutshell, that's an H1B visa in the United States.
Well, the reason why I'm emphasizing on Indians is, of course, I am India-based. We are talking about to an audience which will be mostly comprising Indians. But I'm also saying because it is said, and I've read some research on this, that a large proportion, maybe over 70% of H1B visas go to Indians. Is that correct?
I think the statistics are correct. And the reason for that is because India or Indians have a large population of students in the United States who are on what we call the F1, the student visa. So the natural progression of somebody coming from India is they come here to study. They either come here to do their bachelor's degree or their master's degree or a PhD. And then when they finish the degree, they move on to the H1B visa, because once you find a job, you need and work visa to work here. So the H1B is like a natural progression for not only Indians who are abroad, the ones in the IT sector who apply directly from India for the IT positions, but it's also applied for students who are already in the United States who can go to the H1B visa. And to answer your question, why Indians dominate the H1B visa, it's because we are mainly in the fields which are called specialty occupation, the highly skilled workers like engineers, doctors, IT professionals. So those are highly skilled jobs which are the necessity for applying for the H1B visa. Therefore, you see a lot of Indians in the H1B visa program. And unfortunately, India does not qualify for the other visas. I mean, I could do O visa for them, but all other non-immigrant visas are not available as easily to the kind of highly skilled workers that India has to offer to the world, basically.
We were discussing just before the show started that it has become the number one, or maybe certainly in the top three topics, burning topics that are being discussed in United States at the moment. So clearly, when that happens, there's a lot more anxiety, wouldn't you say?
Yes, there is. At the moment, there is a lot of anxiety related to the H1B visa program, is because, as you saw in the last couple of months, it's made it in the news. People don't know what's going to happen with it. So people are concerned about where do we go from here on the H1B visa because of various reasons. But I do not see an issue, at least from the recent news that I have read, Sidharth, is that the H1B visa program is still in place. The lottery system, the H1B lottery system, is actually going to start in March of 2025. This is for employers, so who are private companies. So they apply in the H1B lottery system. And this is where the majority of the Indians and the IT sector, where they will put their name in the H1B lottery, and then they wait to be selected. And this process happens actually once a year. Each year in March, we apply for the registration process of the H1B visas. And this is where a lot of Indians in the IT sector, even from India and from the United States, who put their name into the pool of the lottery. And then you get selected because the H1B visa system is based on a quota-based system. You only have 65,000 H1B visas for people who hold a bachelor's degree or even actually a master's from India. But if you have a master's degree from the United States, so let's say if the student has come here on the student visa and they are staying here and they have what we call a master's degree or a PhD degree, because these are called advanced cap, those H1B quota system gives them an additional 20,000 advanced degree H1B visa. So total H1B visas are 85,000 per year, which then obviously if you get selected in the H1B lottery, then we go ahead and file what we call the H1B petition for those workers. And that's how it works. Keep in mind that this is just for private employers. There's also a pool of H1B visas that I would like your viewers to know, which are called H1B cap exempt. So, for example, if you do not get selected in the H1B lottery, doesn't mean it's the end of the world for that student who is here or for somebody who needs to apply. You could look for jobs in a university, a college, a hospital. These are non-profit entities. And if you are a non-profit entity, there is some regulations, they call cap exempt H1Bs. So that is available actually throughout the year. That is not subject to the quota-based system of that 85,000. So that's your second option. If you need to be on the H1B visa, you don't find the lottery, then go ahead and look at the options for working at a non-profit so that you have that ability to still go and work someplace, and you are not basically, you don't have to leave the country if you are here on the student visa.
But you need to have a job one way or the other.
Correct. So H1B is sponsored by the employer. It's a completely employment-based work visa. A person, like the individual applicant, cannot sponsor himself. But let me tell you that there is a way, without getting too technical about it, there is a way in the new Biden rule that came out in December where if you have, they call self-sponsored H1Bs. So if you can form a company, a limited liability company, which you can, so there is no restriction actually in the United States for a foreigner to form a corporation for himself. You cannot work, right? You don't have the work visa to do it, but there's no restriction on forming a corporation because that's corporate law and that's state law. So you could do, let's say, and I'll use Ohio as an example, okay? I am in Ohio. It's Ohio corporate law. You could form a limited liability company for that applicant. And then if they have the funds or a business plan, they can file, that LLC can also file in the H1B lottery system for your company. So that's called self-sponsored H1Bs. It's a little more difficult, but again, you need that employer. So that LLC would be your employer. So there are actually factors that go into the H1B filing process. So there are multiple ways you could do it, and that's how it works. I just wanted your viewers to know it's not the end of the world if you don't get selected in that lottery. Look and explore for other options because they do exist.
I presume a lot of viewers who are going to see this will be a little relieved, but this has to be done through a legal process.
Correct. It is absolutely. I am actually a legal immigration attorney, and my day-to-day practice involves legal immigration. So I make sure that we basically follow the rules correctly. That is very important in immigration law because you do not want to fall into the cracks. You don't want to accrue any unlawful status because that becomes challenging when then we apply for the green card process.
Tell me, have you been receiving a lot more calls than normal?
Yes and no. People do know the H1B visa actually is in place. Actually, none of the regulations have changed. So it is still the same as it was last year. And the only difference that I saw during President Trump's first administration, the first 4 years that he was in office, was that the request for evidence went up when we applied for the H1B visas. They were up by 60 or 65%. But as long as we respond to the request for evidence, then the H1B can be approved. So the work might increase a little bit, but the regulations and the process remains the same. And I don't expect it to change, hopefully, in this upcoming 4 years as well.
Tell me then why, if the process has not changed, the law has not changed, everything seems to be going according to what it should be. There's no sudden upheaval, so to speak. Why is there this anxiety that you speak of?
I think this is in part because of the executive orders that President Trump has signed. Therefore, when people read those executive orders on immigration, I think people just bulk everything together. So the anxiety is created because it looks like President Trump is against illegal immigrants. I see that. How we could relate that to the legal immigration, I do not know, but there have been some executive orders that have targeted actually legal immigrants as well. And an example would be this birthright executive order that just recently came out. I have seen that order, I have read through the text, and unfortunately that birthright executive order has targeted not only the illegal aliens or undocumented workers, it has also targeted what we call the legal immigrants, which include the H1B visa holders, by saying that if now you have a child in the United States, then that child will not be granted US citizenship. And that is concerning because it is under the US Constitution that it's the 14th Amendment which grants birthright citizenship to any child that is born in the United States. So when people review that executive order, I think then they kind of bulk everything together. And they think, and it applies to H1B visas as well. So that's become challenging. And I think all the anxiety related to the election process, where we were told that, hey, there is a lot of people entering the country. So I think what's happening is people are, in their mind, putting illegal aliens and legal aliens in the same basket. And at the end of the day, I don't think people understand the difference, or probably, I don't know if they care, but that's creating the angst on immigration that you're seeing in the news today.
Actually, I'm going to come to both those subjects in a second. Coming to the illegals, already many thousands of illegals have been identified. There have been newspaper headlines here that the Indian government has been told that it will check they have identified 18,000 Indian illegal migrants. I suppose the same thing applies to the Chinese and to other countries, Mexicans, and that these have to be taken back. These have been rounded up. And India has said, again, you may have read, that it will check the citizenship credentials of each and every one of those migrants. Because how do you know that they are Indian and not from some other country? Mm-hmm. Just because you think they are Indian, they may not be. Now, this is going to create a bureaucratic tangle, which could go on for years, because 18,000 people's credentials to be checked. So, why do you think, we understand why, but how do you think this is going to play out? You said that in the general mind, all of these things are the same, or at least connected. But how do you think this subject is going to play out?
So as far as illegal, they call them aliens, but we call them illegal foreigners in the United States. I think the issue is that they can apply for what we call asylum in the United States. Okay, there is something called affirmative asylum. So I do not know what that process is for the 18,000 illegal Indians that you mention over here. But the way it would work is, if they are in what we call a deportation proceeding. So the government would put them in what we call a deportation proceeding. They have probably rounded them up and told them to go back to their country. And it's not just related to India. I believe we have a lot of other illegal aliens. My understanding is that almost 11 million illegal aliens in a total in the United States. I mean, nobody is counting, but they have kind of come about over the years. So there is a lot of quantity of illegal aliens in this country, and you see the border, people are still coming in. So I totally agree, actually, with President Trump over here. I believe we do need to take care of the illegal, undocumented workers and kind of do something about it, because you cannot have a country with open borders. You have to follow the legal process, because what's happening is those illegal aliens are kind of, as I said, in the minds of people, they are basically equating the illegal immigration with the legal immigration. And you need to follow the rules. So I don't know what will happen. Time will tell as to what will happen to the 18,000 that are Indians. But that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, if you look at India's population, India actually has a majority of legal workers here. So if we are just looking at 18,000 out of a population of whatever Indian origin is almost like 1.5 billion, I think we need to look at that, weigh it. And what I would advise India to do is negotiate. Use that as a negotiating point to actually take care of your legal immigrants who are in this country. Negotiate the green card quota-based system where Indians are so backlogged that they cannot adjust status and get the green card. So I think it's a give and take because our law is not going to change. The immigration law is what it is. Congress makes that law. The law in the United States is not going to change. They're not going to make an exception for just one country, which is India, right? Because we would have to apply that law across the board. You can't pick and choose a country where illegal aliens are concerned because the same law will apply to everybody. So let's wait and see on that topic as to what happens to those 18,000.
But that brings up a very interesting point because you touched upon it a little while earlier. In the any person who is potentially from those communities or those countries which who has sent legal and illegal to the United States, it could be any country. In this case, because of the 18,000 figure has been mentioned. In the mind of the authorities, they could be, they could be legal or illegal by the way they look. Similarly, in the minds of, in the perception of, say, the general population, especially in, somebody who's already prejudiced against the fact that too many Indians or too many Chinese or too many people are coming here and taking our jobs, the same thing could happen. It could result in some form of racism and some form of indiscriminate treatment. Of course, they can say, show us your credentials, but the person who is deeply prejudiced against foreigners coming and taking their job is not going to wait to see. I see some kind of potential for social problems here.
Actually, Sidharth, will disagree with you on this point. I am an American, and when I landed here 35 years ago into Chicago, from Bombay, or it was Bombay back then, in 1990. And when I first landed here, I was on a student visa. Actually, I was a wife of a student. So I actually came here on what we call the F2 visa. And I knew the day one that I landed here that America was a very warm-hearted country. I believe that Americans are very generous. If you look at us, we are very diverse. I mean, there is no other country on earth today that is as diverse as United States of America. And that reason is because we are a country of immigrants. We have taken from each part of the world. If I look around, we have taken not just Indians, people from China. You look around the world and I can point out and show you that there is an American from that country. So I don't believe that America is a racist country, actually. I believe that Americans in their own hearts, and it doesn't matter if they're Republicans or they are Democrats, I don't care about what political affiliation they have. I think they get it. I think we do not have that issue. Yes, we may have it in certain segments or certain sections of those people, but I don't think it's related to immigration then. It's more related to a general perspective, right? Each of us, we have our own biases and prejudices. Can't change that. All we can do is what actions do we take or what do we do? So if you look at what United States has done, United States has actually accepted immigrants, and even the illegal immigrants, undocumented workers are here. We have provided them with jobs, they have a home. There is a reason they are leaving their country and coming here, right? I mean, they could stay back. Even if they're illegals, there's a reason they are crossing the border. They're coming to America because they believe there is a better life over here than what it was back home. So I think we'll figure it out. I am an optimist. I have immense hope. And actually, I believe in the justice system. in the United States. I have gone to the courts, I have walked in for hearings. At the end of the day, I think the United States Supreme Court will also rule in the correct manner.
But you don't think that there are misguided people?
They are, but there are misguided people everywhere. There are misguided people.
That's true.
Right? So
but
I don't
we are
believe,
on this subject.
Yeah. So there are misguided people who don't understand sometimes the law, but then there's nothing I can do about them in their own heads. So all we can do is move on, look at the positive attributes of both the illegal and the legal immigration system, and just take it as it is and solve it. Like, as I say in my day-to-day practice, let's solve it one case at a time. I cannot do it. I can't change the system. All I can do is help that one immigrant case by case, do it consistently and persistently, and help them with whatever kind of need they have. As far as racism, I'm telling you, it's something that exists. It is what it is. I don't let it bother me at all. I mean, as long as we look at things positively, I think we get the response back from the other side.
Okay, that's a wonderful hope to have and wonderful attitude. But I was just giving, a kind of, shall we say, another way of looking at things. And asking whether this is a possibility.
Correct. And racism, see, my understanding is it's going to be there. So it has nothing to do with any political party. How people think, they have been thinking like this even 10 years ago or 15 years ago. They just didn't voice that opinion. Nowadays, I think people have found that they can voice that opinion that they have, or the biases they have. People are openly talking about it. Maybe you had that bias in your head and you never spoke about it. So that's up to that individual. But as far as I'm concerned, I haven't seen it. As I said, I've lived here for 35 years. I am an immigrant myself. We have gone through some challenges. But overall, I do believe that Americans are kind of open-hearted and generous, and we do welcome everybody.
You touched upon it again a little while ago because of this, all kinds of ideas going on about, and one of the things that President Trump has signed is it done away with birthright citizenship. It has been already challenged, and it has one judge has put a stay on it. Many states have got together against it because it is unconstitutional. But yet, there are reports of young parents rushing for a C-section or rushing to speed up the delivery in some way. What exactly is the situation as far as that is concerned?
So, as you know, the executive order on this birthright ban is what it's called, was signed on January 20 of 2025. And the text of that executive order gives 30 days for it to become effective. So come February 20th, which is literally in about 2 or 3 weeks, the birthright ban would go into effect. But you are correct, there is already lawsuits being filed in various states, and there has been what we call a temporary restraining order, which is an injunction to stop the effective date of the executive order, and it's been granted. So when a TRO is granted, or when the injunction has been granted, then that February 20th date will not be effective, Sidharth. So the people who are rushing to get a C-section done, the stay has been granted. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. So, and then the courts will decide. My review, I'm not a constitutional law, expert, but my reading of the executive order, I think the issue over there, if I may get a little complex, is, so they are born in the United States, and then there is a line which says, and subject to the jurisdiction hereof. So I think what President Trump or their attorneys are saying is that line, subject to the jurisdiction hereof, whenever you are kind of not a green card holder or not a US citizen or not married. So you're having a baby, and if you're not married to a green card holder or a US citizen, then that baby in the United States is not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And even though I'm not a constitutional law expert, I just don't see how they do it, because I do a lot of litigation. This is an issue of what we call personal jurisdiction. Whenever you have right to file a case, the courts need to have jurisdiction on somebody. But the moment you're born here, I think the moment you're born in the United States, you do become subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So I don't see where they go with it. And the second issue is it's part of the 14th Amendment. It's in the Constitution of the United States. And unfortunately, President Trump does not have the power to change the Constitution. The power to change the Constitution lies only with Congress, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate. And they need a 2/3 majority to make any changes to the Constitution. So if I may give you a lesson kind of in a nutshell, there are three branches. There are three branches in the United States. One is the court system, which is called the judiciary. The second is Congress, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate, which has the power to make law. And the third branch is what we call the executive branch, which is where the president of the United States sits. So we call the American kind of system a three-legged stool. And we have checks and balances amongst those three branches so that no one branch can just go do something and get away with it. So in this case, when President Trump signed that executive order, it is my opinion that it is unconstitutional. I don't think it's going to fly muster. I think it's a tactic for me to distract. It's distracting from other actually main issues in immigration. Because this country, we desperately need an immigration reform. Congress has not passed an immigration law since the 1990s, okay? So it's been 35 years since the time that Congress has worked on any rules or regulations to address a lot of the problems that you just mentioned. The issue of illegal immigration, the issue of the quota-based system, the issue of the legal immigration process. Congress has not passed any law for 35 years. And passing this executive order is a distraction from the real immigration issues. I think they do need to look at immigration and pass certain rules and regulations now in this decade, right? 35 years ago, things were very different. Today, things are very different with social media, with America becoming more brown than it was before. I think that's where your racism issue comes in. I think they are trying to protect themselves. We are changing. Our country is changing, and I think that's causing some anxiety as we grow and we become different dynamics, different races who are Americans in this country. So this is a complex issue. I don't think we can solve it soon, but it is what it is, and I think we just take it 1 year at a time.
Yeah, so basically, nobody needs to rush and do anything silly to have a baby.
Talk to your physician, and this is something personal to them. I have no advice on this one for them.
Yeah.
Let's
finally, my last question, and this there are. What would you say to parents sitting here and wondering whether they should encourage their children to apply for tech jobs which will give them H1B, to even bother to apply to the United States, instead look elsewhere? A lot of people are wondering now. There is chatter that, my daughter, my son's an engineer, and should I even encourage them to go to the United States? What would you tell them, legally and socially?
I would say if that is what you are interested in doing, I would be an absolute yes for me. This country has given me a lot. And even if I look around, I still believe at my heart that America is my country and India is obviously my birth country. As you know, unfortunately, Indians cannot retain dual citizenship. And we are one of the few nations on earth, actually, where I had to revoke my Indian citizenship when I became a naturalized US citizen. So if somebody is watching your podcast from India, I would encourage, remember this issue of whatever legal or illegal immigration, if India can look at that aspect, because we are growing. We are now the largest, actually, population on earth. We have, India has done very well. We have come a long way from what it was 30 years ago. India is doing what it needs to do. And then we have a lot of Indian origin kids now, right? Who are not even part of your population. I have my children born in the United States, children born in the United Kingdom, children born in other parts of the world, where if we could get what we call a dual citizenship, it would be helpful because most of the countries, I see people from the European countries, they can retain their nationality, they can retain their passports and also become Americans. I think it'll be helpful to India in the long run. And that way, right, if you're sending your child to the United States, you don't have to worry. They will retain their Indian citizenship. They'll come here, they'll study, they'll become an American, and they will be dual citizens. And at the end of the day, America is growing too. We have a population now of 350 million. So whenever people are forming LLCs or corporations, I always tell them, look at our market. We can sell, like, right? If you have your self-sponsored H1B LLC, go start a business and you can sell to 350 million because the competitor to us is Canada. So I tell them, look, Canada only has a population of 40 million and it's very cold up there. So what is happening is people are looking at either sending their kids to Canada or sending them to United States. So the choice is, I would absolutely say United States. You should send your children here. The H-1B visa system is still in place. The only issue is the green card, getting the green card. I think that has become challenging because India is so backlogged. And that's the reason I'm looking at kind of Congress to do something about that backlog and pass some law which will enable those Indians to get their green cards sooner.
Is it backlog for everybody?
No, so that's a weird system, okay? It's not backlogged for everybody, and the reason for this is that what happened is the quota-based system for the green cards now, okay? Green cards also have a quota-based system when it is an employment-based green card. If you are a family-based green card, then if you marry a US citizen, for example, or if you have a child who is a US citizen or parent who is a US citizen, and then there are some rules. Family-based green cards do not have a backlog. They are called, they go in a different system, but most of the Indians have what we call an employment-based green card. When you have an employment-based green card, there are different categories, EB1, EB2, EB3, and then of course EB5, the investor category, where Indians now are turning to that because there's no backlog in EB5. EB1 is a little bit backlogged. EB2 and EB3 are where most Indians fall into. And the reason for this backlog is that all countries get the equal amount, okay, of green cards. But as you know, India's population it does not take into account the population of the country or the number of people that people send here. So India and China, the students from India and China are basically the ones who come to the United States, and they are the ones who have applied for those green cards, and the backlog keeps growing and growing and growing. I believe it's a decade. It's been like 10 years of backlog right now in the approved I-140 petitions. Those are the green card petitions, and they cannot adjust their status. into a green card. And that's why you see, if you mentioned the H1B visas, and that's the reason you see, like, as if India has a big amount of people in H1B visa. The problem is because they did not get their green cards like other countries did. So now the numbers get skewed, right? It adds, and the H1B quota and the H1B holders keep on growing is because those H1B holders cannot get their green card. If we would give them their green card, I can tell you the H1B numbers would go down. And that's not something we can solve in a day. This is something that Congress needs to look at and come up with a plan on how they address those issues, because there are challenges in my legal immigration. Sometimes I don't even worry about the illegal immigrants out there, because there are so many problems in the legal immigration itself that we need to fix. And I believe there is an agreement. I hope they come up with a law to address those issues. And somebody is out there listening to this, and hopefully we can kind of put that thought in their head and the change can happen, you know.
Well, thank you very much. You have really explained a lot of complex issues and addressed the anxieties of parents and of others who are there. And of course, as I mentioned towards the end, those who want to have a child, like, absolutely rapidly, so that they escape that ban, which is now not going to take place as things stand. But it still is going to be a very, very hot button issue in the next few weeks, months, maybe. And until, in fact, the Congress and this, sorts out the whole issue of immigration. You said 35 years, nobody has touched it. Again, it must be because it's a political hot potato.
Right. I think the last act, Sidharth, that they signed, and I have not looked, is 1996. It was the IRA. I do remember, because I was in this country, and actually I was in law school and I wrote an article about it. There was a lot of things that they added in it, which actually were really far off. But today that seems nothing compared to what's going on today, So. And yes, Congress does need to pass some law. I am a big believer that they do need to do something about this. They have the House. Republicans have the House. Republicans have the Senate. And Republicans have a president. I think they should look at passing some immigration reform and get that done soon. That is my hope for this current administration.
Yeah. On that note, thank you, Duriya, for joining us and giving your legal opinion, your personal opinion. And in fact, I was very interested, very happy that you also talked as a migrant yourself, to say that these have been your experiences, which obviously is going to encourage whoever listens to this. So thank you once again for joining us. We won't bother you again and again and again, like television may do that, but do let us know if there is something you want to talk about one day.
Sure. It's been my pleasure actually doing your show. And if any of your viewers need to reach out to me, you can look it up. Luckily, Google gives me the #1 spot because of my name, Duriya Dhinojwala. I'm very easy to find online. And anyone has any questions, of course, feel free to reach out to me. I do a lot of pro bono work as well. And of course, my law firm work. If there is any way we can help in any way, feel free to reach out. And thank you for having me.
Okay, on that note, thank you very much. And we'll be back next week with another guest on the wire. Till then, from me, Sidharth Bhatia, and my team, thank you for watching.